Have you ever been so loyal to your family that you didn't notice when they stopped being loyal to you? I'm Jessica, 35. And until last Christmas, I believed in one simple truth. Family comes first. That belief shattered that day I overheard my younger sister laughing about how my parents were taking her and her husband on a luxury Christmas vacation without even telling me. I wasn't invited. No phone call, no explanation, just silence. And when I finally spoke up, when I asked why my own family had decided I didn't matter this year, they called me selfish. That's when everything changed. This is a story of how I went from being the dependable daughter, the one who always gave, always made room, always made peace, to the woman who finally said enough. And if you've ever felt invisible at your own dinner table or like your loyalty was a one-way street, then what happened to me might feel painfully familiar. Stick around, because this isn't just a story about a ruined Christmas. It's about reclaiming your voice when the people closest to you pretend you don't have one. Growing up, I believed that no matter what happened, no matter how hard life got or how messy things became, family always came first. It was the kind of truth that felt so deeply rooted it didn't need to be questioned. My parents, David and Karen, had raised my younger sister Lindsay and me on that foundation. We stick together. We show up. We never leave anyone behind. So when the first week of December rolled around last year, I was already daydreaming about snow-covered cabins, hot cocoa by the fire, and board game marathons. Our annual family Christmas trip, just the five of us tucked away in a rustic Vermont cabin, had been a tradition for nearly a decade. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. It was the one week every year when we slowed down, laughed more, and reconnected like we used to before adulthood pulled us in opposite directions. I'd even taken PTO months in advance. As a tech consultant in a competitive firm, getting time off in December was like winning the lottery. But I made it happen because this was important to me. Family was important. So imagine my confusion when I came home early one Tuesday evening. My last meeting of the day had been canceled, and I heard my sister's voice floating from the kitchen. Mom said the resort has private hot tubs in every suite, and there's a spa with facials and hot stone massages. Oh, and ski in, ski out access right from the rooms. Resort spa. That wasn't our usual cozy cabin in Vermont. I paused in the hallway, heart thudding. My sister Lindsay and her husband Sean were standing by the kitchen island, grinning like they'd just won the lottery. So much better than that old cabin, Sean laughed. I'm glad your parents decided to upgrade this year. I felt my blood run cold. Your parents, not our parents, upgrade this year. Without even telling me, I stepped into the room slowly like I was walking into someone else's life. What resort are you talking about, Lindsay? And Sean turned toward me, faces blanching like they'd seen a ghost. Jess, you're home early, Lindsay said, her voice suddenly small. What? Resort. There was a pause, a long guilty silence. Sean was the first to break it. Might as well just tell her. Lindsay looked at me, her eyes flickering with something that might have been remorse or maybe just discomfort at being caught. Mom and Dad decided to do something different this year. We're going to Colorado, a ski resort in Aspen. They found this amazing place and booked it in October. October. They had been planning this since October. I stood there, stunned. I had spent weeks collecting ideas for cabin activities. I'd already bought matching Christmas pajamas for all five of us. I'd even made a custom hot cocoa mix to bring my little tradition, and they'd been planning an entirely different trip without me. Why didn't anyone tell me? Lindsay looked down. Sean crossed his arms like this was somehow an inconvenience. "We figured you probably couldn't come anyway," he said. "You're always busy with work." "I already got the time off," I said, feeling something crack inside me. "I requested it months ago. I was excited. I've been planning." Lindsay shifted uncomfortably. "I told Mom and Dad that maybe this year it could just be the four of us," she admitted. "You tend to take over the trip every year. All the planning, the activities. It gets kind of exhausting." My jaw dropped. "You mean because I try to make sure we actually do something instead of sitting around on our phones all week?" "No," Sean cut in. "It's because you always have to be in charge. And it's not just that. It's the constant work talk. The my job this, my promotion that. Not everyone wants to hear about how great you're doing all the time, Jess." I blinked. This wasn't just about a Christmas trip. This was a coordinated effort to make me feel like the problem, like my existence was too much. I excused myself before I broke down completely. Upstairs in my bedroom, I called my mom. She answered on the third ring. "Hi, sweetheart." "Hi, Mom." I said, my voice trembling. "I just heard about Colorado." There was a pause. Then, "We were going to tell you when." "While you were boarding the plane, Jessica, don't be dramatic. We just thought you'd appreciate the time to yourself. You're always saying how busy you are." "Was it Lindsay's idea to leave me out?" Another pause. "She mentioned that it might be better this way. She said you'd be okay with the break." I couldn't believe it. My own mother, justifying it, siding with the sister I had helped time and time again, the one who was living in my house, who I had supported financially and emotionally when she needed a place to land. "So you all decided together that I didn't belong this year, sweetheart? Please don't make this bigger than it is." But it was big. It was enormous. It was the moment I realized that my place in this family wasn't guaranteed. That all my efforts to show up to support, to make things better, it didn't earn me loyalty. It earned me silence, and silence can be deafening when it comes from people who claim to love you. After that call with my mother, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the hardwood floor, trying to process what had just happened. My family, the people I'd shown up for over and over, had planned a holiday trip without me. And not just any trip, but the one time a year that made me feel like we still had a connection, that we were still a unit. But then, something even more painful hit me. Lindsay had done it from inside my house. She was living under my roof when she convinced our parents to leave me behind. I looked around the bedroom, my sanctuary, and felt suddenly like a stranger in my own home. Let me backtrack a little. About a year earlier, Lindsay and Sean hit a rough patch. Sean had just started a new job in marketing after getting laid off for most of 2022, and Lindsay had quit her job at a dental clinic after some kind of blowout with her boss. They said they were saving for a down payment on a house, but with rent prices climbing and their income unstable, they were falling behind fast. When they came to me, embarrassed and desperate, I didn't hesitate. "You can stay here until you get on your feet," I told them. "A few months, maybe 6, no pressure." I had just finished renovating my basement, converted it into this beautiful entertainment space with a guest room, full bathroom, and even a little kitchenette. I gave them full access. charge them just enough rent to cover utilities. I didn't need the money I had, just landed a raise at work, but it felt fair. Because that's what family does. Family shows up. Family shares. Family sacrifices. You're the best sister ever, Jess. Lindsay had said that day, tears in her eyes. We'll never forget this. But they did forget. Or maybe they never actually meant it. What was supposed to be a short stay turned into 11 months. And somewhere along the way, the gratitude disappeared. They settled in as if it were their house. At first, I didn't mind. What's mine is yours, right? But slowly, things started to shift. Subtly, and then not so subtly. Sean started inviting his coworkers over for drinks in my backyard without asking. I'd come home to loud music, empty beer bottles, and people I didn't know in my kitchen. Once, I found a half-eaten pizza sitting on the top of a pile of unopened mail on my dining table, my mail. And don't even get me started on the kitchen. Sean had a habit of using my expensive appliances, my KitchenAid mixer, my espresso machine, even my cast iron skillet, and never cleaning up after himself. One day, I found the mixer caked in dried batter. Hey, Sean, next time could you clean it after you use it? That thing wasn't cheap. He shrugged. Relax, Jess. We're family. Don't be so uptight about your stuff. I laughed it off even though I didn't find it funny, because that's what I always did. I made excuses. I bit my tongue. I reminded myself they were going through a rough time, that I was lucky enough to help. But it started to wear me down. I found myself working longer hours not just for the bonuses, but because being at home didn't feel like home anymore. My best friend, Emily, was the first to say what I wouldn't. We were sitting at our usual coffee shop one Sunday afternoon when I vented about finding dirty dishes in the sink again and how they hadn't paid rent on time for the second month in a row. Jess, she said, setting her latte down firmly. You're being used. No, come on, I replied, instantly defensive. They're just struggling right now. They'll figure it out. Emily gave me a look that only someone who's known you for 20 years can pull off, half compassion, half truth bomb. They go out to brunch every weekend. Lindsay posted a story from a sushi place last night. They're not struggling, Jess. They're comfortable. Because you made it easy for them. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. She was right. Somewhere along the line, what I thought was generosity had turned into enablement. My kindness had become their convenience. And yet I still didn't confront them. I kept telling myself that once they saved enough, they'd move out, that they were just in a phase. So I worked harder. I covered more expenses. I gave more space, all while they took more and gave nothing in return. And now I realized that while they were living in my home, using my furniture, my electricity, my groceries, they were planning a Christmas trip with my parents, one I wasn't even invited to. They had been in my basement, whispering about ski resorts and spa packages while I was upstairs planning a gingerbread decorating night and picking out Christmas stockings with everyone's names. The betrayal burned deep, not just because they excluded me, but because they had done it while looking me in the eye every day, smiling, laughing, eating the meals I cooked, using the Wi-Fi I paid for, and pretending everything was fine. That night, as I lay in bed with the house quiet around me, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself a hard question. When did my family stop seeing me as a person and start seeing me as a resource? And worse, why had I let it happen? It's strange how you can live with someone, see them every day, share space meals, even laughs, and still not realize how little they respect you. For a long time, I thought I was being overly sensitive. The late-night noise, the kitchen messes, the friends of friends lingering in my house long after I'd gone to bed, all of it felt like minor annoyances in the grand scheme of things, temporary disruptions in the name of helping family. But disrespect rarely walks in wearing a neon sign. It seeps in, slowly, wrapped in familiar voices and comfortable excuses. That December, it started to feel different, heavier, more intentional. It wasn't just the messes or unpaid rent. It was the way Lindsay and Sean looked at me or didn't. Like I was no longer a person with boundaries or even a host in her own home. I was just the infrastructure, a power outlet, a pantry, a doormat. I started noticing things that for months I had trained myself not to see. The time Sean borrowed my car without asking, just for a quick Target run, and left the gas tank empty. The heated argument I had with him about using my Vitamix to blend margaritas for his coworkers at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. The pile of Amazon boxes with their names stacked in the front hallway while their rent continued arriving late, if at all. And then there was the incident with my stand mixer. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I had just gotten back from the grocery store. I was planning to bake cookies to bring into work something cheerful to lighten the tension that hung in our office during year-end crunch. I walked into the kitchen and froze. The stand mixer I'd saved up for sleek, matte, black, high-end was coated in dried cake batter crusted around the blades and smeared across the counter. Seriously, Sean looked up from the couch, barely glancing at me over his phone. "What? You used my mixer and didn't even clean it." "Oh, come on, Jess," he groaned. "It's just a mixer. Don't be so uptight about your stuff. We're family." That sentence, "we're family," landed with the weight of a punch. As if sharing DNA gave him the right to ignore basic respect. As if family was a hall pass for entitlement. And still, I didn't say what I really wanted to say. I cleaned the mixer. I muttered something like, "Just clean it next time," knowing full well there wouldn't be a next time. At least, not one where things would be any different. A few nights later, I caught Lindsay in my bedroom, my private bedroom, looking for her charger, she said. But what bothered me more wasn't that she had entered my room without asking, it was the way she brushed off my discomfort when I brought it up. "Jess, you're acting like I broke into your room. I just needed a charger. Chill, chill. Don't be so uptight. We're family." Those phrases had become the cover for every little boundary they crossed. And it wasn't just Lindsay and Sean. The pattern ran deeper through my parents, too. Anytime I tried to bring it up to explain how I felt like I was being taken advantage of, I got the same response from my mom, sweetheart. "They're going through a tough time. You're in such a good place right now. Can't you just let it go?" As if success disqualified me from having boundaries. As if having more meant I didn't deserve to expect respect. One night, after another long day at work, I came home to find my living room rearranged. My grandmother's antique coffee table, one of the few pieces I truly cherished, had been pushed aside to make room for a new gaming console and beanbags. Sean's gaming buddies were lounging in my space playing loudly while Lindsay scrolled through her phone. No one looked up when I walked in. No one acknowledged that it was my house. That was the moment I felt something break, not in anger, but in clarity. This wasn't just a rough patch. This wasn't just me overreacting. It was a slow, consistent erosion of self-worth, and I had enabled it every step of the way. They didn't respect me because I hadn't demanded they do so. I had mistaken generosity for love, and in return, I was treated like an inconvenience in my own home. That night, I called Emily. "I think I'm done," I told her, pacing my bedroom. Finally, she said not unkindly, "What changed? Nothing." And that's the problem. I've been hoping things would get better, that they'd wake up and realize what they're doing. But they won't. Why would they? I made it easy to ignore me. So, what are you going to do? I'm not sure yet, but it's going to start with saying no. The next morning, I left a note on the fridge, just one line. "We need to have a serious conversation tonight." It was the beginning of a shift. The first time I stopped biting my tongue. The first time I allowed myself to say enough. Because love without respect isn't love. And family without boundaries isn't family. It's chaos. It's silence. It's a slow unraveling that eventually leaves you empty in the place you once felt safest. I didn't know then just how deep the betrayal would go, that they'd been planning a Christmas trip behind my back the whole time. But part of me must have sensed it, because by the time I found out, I wasn't shocked. I was ready. I wasn't supposed to be home early that day. It was a random Tuesday in early December, cold gray forgettable. A project meeting had been canceled last minute, and for once, I didn't have a back-to-back calendar choking out my evening. I remember being oddly excited at the idea of pouring a glass of wine and catching up on a true crime podcast, a rare slice of quiet in the chaos. What I didn't know was that I was walking into a moment that would change everything. The front door closed behind me with a soft click, and instantly I heard voices drifting up from the kitchen. Lindsay and Sean. I was about to call out a hello when something in their tone stopped me. They were excited, too excited, giddy. "Mom said every suite has a private hot tub," Lindsay said, laughing. "Can you imagine soaking after a full day on the slopes?" "And massages," Sean added. "I booked mine already. The spa looks insane." I stood frozen in the entryway. Slopes Spa Suites. This wasn't our cabin in Vermont. "This is going to be way better than last year," Lindsay continued. "And no board games and chili night for the 5th year in a row." "No offense," Sean said with a chuckle, but that whole Vermont vibe was getting old. "This year's going to be luxury." My brain scrambled to process what I was hearing. A ski resort, booked massages. Why were they talking like we were going somewhere we'd never been? "I do feel kind of bad about Jess," Lindsay said, her voice dipping, "but she'll be fine. She's always working anyway." It felt like my stomach dropped through the floor. They were talking about me. This wasn't just a weekend getaway. They were planning Christmas without me. My feet moved before I could stop them. I stepped into the kitchen like someone walking into a fire without realizing they'd been burned. "What resort are you talking about?" Lindsay and Sean spun around. The look on their faces was all the confirmation I needed. "Jess, you scared us," Lindsay said, forcing a smile. "What resort?" I asked again calmly. Too calmly. There was a pause. Then Sean shrugged. "We're going to Aspen," he said flatly. "Your parents booked it weeks ago. It's kind of a family thing." "And when was anyone going to tell me?" "We weren't sure you'd be able to come," Lindsay mumbled. "You're always slammed at work." I laughed out loud. The kind of laugh that sounds like it's coming from someone who just realized the joke was on them the entire time. "I already took the week off. I've had the time blocked since September." "But you knew that, because I told you." Lindsay looked away. Sean crossed his arms. "Look," he said, "it's not like this is personal. We just wanted a quieter trip this year. Less planning." Less structure. Less me, you mean? That's not what we said, Lindsay replied quickly. It's just every year you take over. The schedule, the meals, the activities, it's a lot. I plan things because no one else does, because I want us to have a good time. Yeah, well, sometimes it feels like you're trying to run the whole show, Sean muttered. Not everyone wants a curated itinerary and a debrief. I stood in silence, stunned by how quickly the narrative had shifted from my family excluding me to me being the problem. This wasn't just passive exclusion. This was premeditated, quiet, calculated. I pulled out my phone and called my mom. She answered on the third ring. Hi, sweetheart. Everything okay? I just heard about Aspen, I said. My voice wasn't shaken, but my hands were. There was a pause long enough to confirm everything. Oh, well, yes, we were going to tell you. When we thought maybe you'd enjoy some quiet time this year, with work being so intense. Did Lindsay suggest not inviting me? Another pause. She mentioned it might be a more relaxed trip with just the four of them. And your dad and I agreed. We thought you might appreciate the break. You all decided this without asking me. Jess, please don't make this into a big drama. You're overthinking it. That was the line that broke something inside me. I wasn't being dramatic. I had been erased. I ended the call and stared at Lindsay and Sean, who were now whispering to each other like I was the unstable roommate instead of the homeowner. How long have you been planning this? I asked. Since October, Lindsay admitted. Mom found the resort and sent the link. 2 months. For 2 months, while I was brainstorming themed dinners and buying matching cabin pajamas, they had already moved on. That night I sat in my room, my face hot with shame and disbelief. I called Emily, my voice breaking for the first time. They left me out, Em. They planned the whole thing without me. My parents, my sister, everyone. She didn't say I told you so. She didn't ask me to calm down. She just said, then it's time to stop showing up for people who don't show up for you. And for the first time in my life, I started to believe her. It's funny, well, not funny, but cruel in the way only family drama can be. How the moment you finally stand up for yourself, the people who've been walking all over you suddenly find the strength to cry victim. That night, after learning about the Aspen trip, I barely slept. I tossed and turned for hours, the weight of 2 months' worth of deception pressing down on my chest like a slow-building panic attack. My home didn't feel like home anymore, and I didn't feel like a daughter or a sister. I felt like a placeholder, a utility, a walk in favor with a Wi-Fi password and heated floors. But I wasn't ready to explode, not yet. I wanted to try one last time to be calm, to be rational, to give them the benefit of the doubt. So the next morning, I waited until Lindsay was alone in the kitchen. She was drinking from my favorite mug, the one that said, World's Okayest Sister, which now read more like a passive-aggressive prophecy than a joke. She scrolled through her phone, looking far too at peace for someone who had orchestrated a family trip that didn't include the person paying her rent. Can we talk? I asked, pouring my own coffee, deliberately grabbing the chipped office mug instead. Sure, she said, not looking up. I kept my voice level. I'm trying to understand why you went behind my back. Why you would suggest to Mom and Dad that I shouldn't come to Christmas. Lindsay finally set down her phone and gave me the look. The kind of look that's half bored, half defensive, like I was being dramatic for bringing it up. It wasn't meant to be behind your back, Jess. It's not like that. It feels exactly like that, I said. You didn't just forget to tell me. You chose not to tell me. She let out a sigh like my hurt feelings were an inconvenience to her morning. You always make everything about you. You're always taking over. You plan everything. You talk about your job constantly. It's exhausting. That word again, exhausting. I don't plan because I want control. I plan because no one else does. I want us to have a good time. And I don't talk about work unless someone asks. Well, it still comes off like showing off, she said bluntly. It's like Jessica, the successful one, and the rest of us are just here to applaud. I stared at her. This wasn't about me being controlling. This was about resentment. Quiet, long-standing resentment that had been sitting just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to bubble up and burst. So you excluded me because you're insecure. No, she snapped. I excluded you because I wanted a break. Before I could respond, Sean walked in, grabbing a protein bar from the counter like he hadn't just helped gut me the night before. Is this still about Aspen? He asked. Jess, seriously. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Am I asked, turning toward him, because it seems pretty proportionate to be upset when your entire family cuts you out of the one tradition you've always cherished. He shrugged. It's just one Christmas. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. Just one Christmas. As if holidays weren't the glue that kept our fractured lives stitched together. As if one Christmas didn't represent every Christmas we'd shared. The board games, the bad ski falls, the inside jokes about Dad's chili recipe. As if this wasn't about the pattern of being dismissed and minimized and expected to just deal with it. What if I came just for a few days, I offered. I could fly in, spend 2 nights. Give you space, but still be included. Lindsay looked at Sean. He shook his head without hesitation. It's already booked. The resort's full. I didn't believe that for a second. Right, I said quietly. Full. Then my phone buzzed. Mom. I stepped out of the kitchen and answered. Hi, honey, she said. Are you still upset about Aspen? Yes, I said. I'm hurt. You left me out. On purpose, I just tried to talk to Lindsay about it, and she told me Mom cut in. And, frankly, Jessica, you need to stop making this a bigger deal than it is. There it was, the tone. That disappointed but composed tone that always made me feel like I was 12 again, being scolded for not sharing my toys. You're always busy with work, she continued. We thought you'd appreciate the quiet. That's not your decision to make. It's not just that she said, and I could hear the irritation now. Lindsay says you've been making her feel guilty all morning, and quite honestly, you can be a bit intense. Maybe it's good for everyone to have a little space. There was a long pause. Jessica, she said more softly, you're being selfish. That word, selfish. I stood still, the air leaving my lungs like someone had hit me in the ribs. Selfish. For being hurt. For wanting to be included. For speaking up. You're calling me selfish, I asked. After everything I've done. After letting Lindsay and Sean live here for 11 months. After covering for them when rent was late and groceries were missing and my privacy got trampled. That's not what this is about. No, I said, cutting her off. This is about the fact that when I stopped being convenient, I stopped being invited. She didn't respond, so I ended the call. When I walked back into the kitchen, Lindsay and Sean were whispering again. This time I didn't say a word. I walked to my room, closed the door behind me, and sat on the floor. Not out of weakness, but out of clarity. They weren't going to change. So I had to, and the first step, stop apologizing for taking up space. By mid-December, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't angry, not exactly. Anger comes fast and loud and burns itself out quickly. What I felt was colder, sharper. It was the clarity that comes after betrayal. The numbness that lets you function while your world rearranges itself without asking permission. I had started to pull back. From Lindsay, from Sean, from the idea that I still had a family in the way I once understood it. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened the week before Christmas. I had just finished a 12-hour day at the office. My team was racing toward a year-end product launch, and I was running on fumes bad coffee and determination. All I wanted was to go home, put on sweats, and pretend my life wasn't unraveling. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something off. There were 3 unfamiliar cars parked haphazardly on the curb. I recognized one, my cousin Tyler's. But I hadn't invited him over. I hadn't invited anyone. As I walked up the steps, I could already hear the music pulsing from inside, festive, loud, cheerful. I unlocked the front door and stepped into what looked like a scene from someone else's holiday movie. The living room had been transformed. Fairy lights strung across the ceiling, garlands wrapped around the banister stockings hung on the mantel I hadn't decorated this year because I didn't feel festive enough. And in the middle of it all, my parents, my cousins, my sister, Sean, laughing, drinking, clinking glasses. I stood there stunned. No one had texted me. No one had asked. This wasn't just a party. It was a send-off party for the trip I had been excluded from. A pre-Aspen celebration. In my house. My house. Lindsay was the first to notice me. Her eyes widened just a second too long before she pasted on a bright, brittle smile. Jess, you're home early. Sean raised his whiskey glass, my expensive single malt no less, and said with a grin, surprise. I wasn't sure if I wanted to laugh or scream. What's going on? I asked, even though I already knew. My mother approached me like I was a guest who'd shown up to the wrong party. We were going to clean everything up before you got home, sweetheart. We know how particular you are. That was the word she always used when she meant difficult. I scanned the room. No one would meet my eyes. Not my cousins, not my uncle, not even my dad, who looked like he'd rather disappear into the fireplace than say anything. So, everyone knew about this trip except me. I asked, my voice louder than I meant it to be. The room quieted. We thought you couldn't come, said my cousin Amber. That's what we were told. I turned to Lindsay, who was now talking to our cousin Grace in the corner. She didn't notice me approaching until I was standing right behind her. Honestly, she was saying it's kind of a relief Jess isn't coming. All she ever does is work. She doesn't even know how to have fun. The cabin trips were always so intense. Schedules, group activities, it felt more like a retreat than a holiday. My chest tightened. This is how she talked about me when she thought I couldn't hear. I stepped back into the hallway, heart pounding in my ears, and that's when I saw it. Sean, in my home office, the one room I had asked them repeatedly not to use. The door was wide open, lights blazing. He was showing something on my computer to my father, wine glass in hand. Red wine, which had just spilled right onto my white carpet. I saw the stain before I saw Sean's face. A spreading sickly red bloom that would never come out. What are you doing in my office? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. Sean barely looked up. Relax. I was just showing your dad the resort photos. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal, I repeated. You're in my private space, on my computer, drinking my wine. And now there's a stain on my carpet. It's just a carpet, he said, rolling his eyes. We'll clean it up. Stop making a scene. That was it. Something broke. Not with noise, not with screaming, just with resolve. Everyone needs to leave, I said calmly. Now. There was silence. My mother moved toward me, her smile tight. Jessica, don't be ridiculous. You're overreacting. Am I asked louder this time because from where I'm standing, you all planned a trip behind my back, lied to me about it for 2 months, and now you're throwing a party in my house to celebrate. Tell me exactly what part of that I'm overreacting to. See, Lindsay said loudly, addressing the room. This is what I meant. Everything has to be about Jess. It's always drama with her. Selfish as always, Sean added, now clearly annoyed. Ruining the party just because you're not the center of attention. I looked around, scanning for one face, any face who would speak up for me. No one did, and that told me everything I needed to know. You have 10 minutes to leave, I said again. And, Lindsay Sean, we'll talk about your living arrangements tomorrow. Because this is over. People began gathering coats, avoiding eye contact. Awkward laughter filled the silence. My mom muttered to my aunt she's always been like this, but I wasn't listening anymore, because for the first time in a long time I felt something I hadn't felt since this all began. Power. The morning after the party felt like waking up from a fever dream, except the mess was still there. Glitter embedded in the rug. Wine rings on the coffee table. Empty Solo cups stuffed into the recycling bin like they were doing me a favor by cleaning up after themselves. I stood in the middle of my living room and realized something with absolute clarity. This wasn't just a house anymore, it was a battlefield, and I was done surrendering. I took a deep breath, grabbed a trash bag, and started cleaning. I wasn't crying, I wasn't angry, I was resolute. Sean and Lindsay had crossed every line and then acted like I was the one being unreasonable for caring. They had turned my generosity into an expectation, my silence into permission. And now, after 11 months of letting them treat my home like a crash pad, and me like a personal assistant, I was finally done. Later that day, I called Maya. I need help. I said, my voice flat but clear. Not emotional support, logistics. Tell me when to be there, she replied without hesitation. She showed up 2 hours later with Ty take out a clipboard and Ethan, her boyfriend, who also happened to be a real estate attorney. While I picked at pad CEU, Ethan explained the basics. You've been letting them stay here for more than 30 days. And even though there's no formal lease that makes them month-to-month tenants by law. So you can't just throw their stuff on the lawn, but you can issue a formal 30-day notice. I blinked. I was hoping you'd tell me I could just kick them out today. Not legally, he said gently, but we can take steps to protect your space starting now. That night, we drafted the notice together, firm, factual, and by the book. It informed Lindsay and Sean that they had 30 days to vacate the property. No arguments, no negotiation. It was happening. The deadline, January 15th. What about the next month, though, I asked. I can't live like this, not after everything. Maya and Ethan exchanged a glance. You said they'd be out all day tomorrow doing last-minute shopping, right? She asked. Yeah, I said. Spa appointments and REI runs. They're planning to get all their gear for the trip I'm not going on. Then tomorrow, Maya said, we take back your house. And we did. The next morning, I called a locksmith. By noon, every lock on the house had been changed. I reprogrammed the security system and updated my smart home app. My space, my sanctuary, was mine again. Then came the hard part. I walked into the basement, their temporary residence, and began packing their essentials, a week's worth of clothes, toiletries, medications, personal items. I took photos of everything, cataloged it neatly, and placed it all in labeled boxes on the covered front porch. The formal notice was taped to the top. You have 30 days to collect your remaining belongings and secure alternative housing. Until then, only essential items have been made accessible. Please coordinate through my legal representative if needed. That was it. I didn't scream. I didn't throw their stuff on the lawn. I didn't shame them online. I set a boundary and enforced it. Around 4 p.m., my phone started lighting up like a Christmas tree. Missed call, Mom. Missed call, Lindsay. Voicemail from Sean. You're going to regret this. This is our home, too. My mother's voicemail was classic, her guilt wrapped in disappointment. Jessica, what have you done? Your sister is crying. Your father is beside himself. This is not how family treats each other. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent one final text. Lindsay and Sean have 30 days to vacate. Essential items are on the porch. Please direct further communication through legal channels. I need space. Do not come to my house uninvited. Then I silenced my phone, sat on the couch, and waited. At 6:47 p.m., I saw their car pull into the driveway. From the living room window, I watched them walk up to the porch, expecting access. Sean tried his key. Nothing. Tried again more forcefully, then pounded on the door. Lindsay stared at the boxes. I saw the moment her face changed from confusion to rage to something close to disbelief. She shouted my name. I didn't respond. I stayed in the dark, clutching a mug of tea like it was armor. Eventually, they gave up, loaded the boxes into their car, and peeled out of the driveway like teenagers after curfew. They were gone. And for the first time in months, my house was quiet. Not tense quiet, not walking on eggshells quiet, not is this even my home quiet. Just peace. Later that night, Maya texted me. Proud of you. Took your power back. That's not selfish. That's survival. She was right. What I'd done that day wasn't cruel. It was the most compassionate thing I'd done for myself. I had spent years thinking that love meant bending, that family meant giving without boundaries, that loyalty meant silence. But that night alone in my reclaimed home, I realized something I wish I'd known sooner. Boundaries aren't betrayal. They're proof that you finally believe in your own worth. The silence after they left didn't last long. By the next morning, the aftershock had arrived loud, messy, and exactly as manipulative as I had feared. It began with a ping, then another, and another. My phone lit up with texts, missed calls, and voicemails not just from my immediate family, but from people I hadn't heard from in months. Cousins, aunts, even my godmother in Wisconsin who never calls unless someone dies. Apparently, news of the lockout had traveled fast and, like all great family gossip, it had arrived stripped of context and dripping with drama. I heard you threw your pregnant sister onto the street right before Christmas. Is that true? Text from Cousin Rachel, who hasn't seen me since 2019. This is not how we were raised, Jessica. Voicemail from Uncle Thomas, stern and disapproving. Whatever happened to family loyalty? A Facebook message from someone I didn't even know I was related to. They all had one thing in common. None of them asked what happened. They just assumed Lindsay's version of the story was gospel, that I had snapped out of nowhere, that I was punishing my poor, struggling sister during the most important time of the year, that I was heartless, cruel, selfish. I let the messages pile up unread. I didn't have the energy to respond, nor the desire to explain myself to people who had never bothered to know me beyond surface-level holidays and Instagram photos. But after 2 days of silence, I unblocked my parents' numbers. Not because I wanted to reconcile, but because I needed to know what version of me they were circulating to the rest of the family. Mom answered on the first ring. Jessica. She exhaled, as if I were a problem that had finally returned to its box. You need to call your sister. She's been sobbing for days. You blindsided her. I issued a legal 30-day notice, I replied calmly. I packed their essentials. I gave them shelter for nearly a year. There was nothing sudden about this. You changed the locks, she snapped. Yes, I said. After they threw a party in my house for a trip I wasn't even invited to. After they used my things, trashed my space, and acted like I was the unwanted guest in my own home. Jessica, this is family, she said. You don't evict family. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't exclude you from traditions. Family doesn't treat your boundaries like a personal insult. Silence. Your father and I had to postpone the Aspen trip, she added with sharpness in her tone, because of all this drama. There it was. Not concern over how deeply hurt I was, not regret over the betrayal, just annoyance that their ski plans had been delayed. Sorry to ruin your vacation, I said flatly, but my emotional breakdown wasn't scheduled around your lift tickets. She hung up. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, letting the numbness settle over me like fresh snow. This wasn't going to end with a group hug. They weren't suddenly going to realize how deeply they'd hurt me, or how much I had sacrificed, or how long I'd been swallowing my voice to keep the peace. But I was done with that kind of peace. Later that day, my sister posted a carefully curated photo on Instagram. A flat lay of 2 mugs of hot cocoa, a fuzzy blanket, and the caption, "When your own sister locks you out, but love still finds a way." Grateful for second chances and warm homes. Family first. Holidays are hard. Pregnant and pushed out. She wasn't just spinning the story, she was weaponizing it. The comments came in fast. You don't deserve this. Unforgivable. Blood should mean more than pride. Hope your sister realizes how lucky she is to have you. I stared at the screen, pulse pounding, and for one brief awful moment I wanted to reply. I wanted to post my side, drop the receipts, show everyone the wine-stained carpet, the party photos, the eviction notice she pretended didn't exist. But then I stopped, because I realized something important. I didn't need their validation. I didn't need to win the PR war on social media. I didn't need to convince distant cousins or judgmental aunts that I wasn't the villain in Lindsay's self-pity parade. The people who mattered, the people who actually knew me, already understood. Maya showed up the next day with groceries and backup chocolate. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. I keep second-guessing everything. Like, maybe I should have waited until after Christmas, or done it more gently, or warned them again, but then I remember. They were never going to leave. They didn't respect me. Not until I made it impossible to keep ignoring me. She nodded. "And even now, they're still trying to make you the bad guy." "Yeah," I said. "But at least now I'm the bad guy with boundaries." Christmas Eve arrived under a soft blanket of snow, the kind that turns your whole street into a Hallmark movie. But inside my house it was quiet, still. No fireplace crackling, no scent of cinnamon rolls, bacon, no laughter, bouncing off the walls like it used to when we crammed into the cabin in Vermont. And yet, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was hosting someone else's expectations. I was finally home in a house that felt like mine again. I hadn't planned on doing anything big for the holiday. After the lockout, the voicemails, the social media smear campaign, Lindsay had launched pregnant and pushed out seriously. I thought I might spend the day alone. Honestly, I was okay with that. Peace had become my new luxury. But people surprise you when you need them most. A few days before Christmas, Maya stopped by with an invitation. "Ethan's parents are throwing an open house on Christmas Eve," she said. "Friends, neighbors, lots of food. Totally low-key. No pressure, but you're family to me, Jess. And I don't want you to spend the day hiding." I was hesitant. Not because I didn't want to be there, but because I didn't want to bring my mess into their joy. "You're not a burden," she said gently, like she could read my thoughts. "You're someone we want there. So I said yes. That morning, I baked chocolate chip cookies, the kind my dad used to love. The kind I hadn't made since I realized he would rather delay a ski trip than call out my sister's behavior. I boxed them up anyway, not for him this time, but for me. For the part of me still choosing softness even after all the hurt. When I arrived at Ethan's parents' house, I was nervous. But the second I stepped inside, I was met with the kind of warmth I hadn't felt in ages. Real warmth. Not the performative smiles or backhanded compliments of holiday dinners past. Just kind people offering me cider and hugs, no backstory required. His mom greeted me like I was an old friend. "Maya tells us you're brilliant and brave," she said, handing me a mug. That's a rare combo. And suddenly, the tightness in my chest I'd been carrying for weeks loosened. Throughout the night, I found myself laughing like full-body snort laughing, talking to people who didn't know my family drama, didn't care about who was right or wrong, people who saw me as me. Maya leaned over during dessert and whispered, "Told you you'd fit in." I believed her. That night back home, I lit a single candle and placed it on the windowsill. No tree, no stockings, just light. I wasn't mourning what I'd lost anymore. I was making room for what came next. Christmas Day was quiet, and I chose it that way. No plans, no expectations. I made myself breakfast, called a few college friends just to say hi, and curled up on the couch with a fleece blanket and an old favorite book. Mid-afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I walked over to the community center and volunteered for a few hours. I poured coffee, served mashed potatoes, listened to stories. One woman told me it was her first Christmas since leaving an abusive marriage. Another man said he hadn't spoken to his kids in 5 years. We all smiled at each other with the kind of understanding you don't need words for. I didn't say much about my situation. But when someone asked where I was spending Christmas, I simply said, "Here, with people who get it." And that felt true. Later, as I walked home through the snow, cheeks flushed and hands full of leftover cookies someone insisted I take, I realized something. This was the Christmas I didn't know I needed. It wasn't polished, it wasn't perfect, but it was mine. To anyone watching this right now who's dealing with messy family dynamics, betrayal, guilt, or that heavy weight of trying to hold everyone together, I see you. And I want you to know something. You're not selfish for protecting your peace. You're not dramatic for expecting respect. You're not heartless for setting boundaries, even if people call you that. You are allowed to say, "This is my limit." And if loving you costs me myself, that's too high a price. This Christmas, I didn't just reclaim my house, I reclaimed my voice, my sanity, my worth. And if you're on that journey too, I hope you give yourself permission to stop proving and start preserving. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If any part of this resonated with you, I'd love for you to leave a comment below. Have you ever had to make a tough choice with your family? How did you navigate it? Share your story. I read every one. If you found value in this, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who might be struggling with family boundaries this holiday season. Because at the end of the day, family isn't just about DNA. It's about respect, love, and the courage to choose peace over obligation. And I think that's something worth celebrating. The week between Christmas and New Year's used to be my favorite, quiet, reflective, full of intentions and hopeful to-do lists. This year, it felt different. Not because I was sad, but because, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't planning around anyone else's comfort. I wasn't hosting. I wasn't sacrificing. I wasn't wondering what version of myself would be most acceptable to my family. I was just living. and then they came back. It was a Thursday morning. My inbox was overflowing, and I was elbows deep in post-holiday client catch-ups when my desk phone rang. Reception. "Hi, Jessica. Sorry to bother you, but there are 4 visitors in the lobby asking to see you. They say they're your family." I froze. Did they give names? A woman named Karen, a man named David, and Lindsay and Sean. Of course, they couldn't just call or write or send a real apology. They had to show up to my workplace of all places, forcing me to choose between public professionalism and private pain. "Please, let 'em know I'm in a meeting and unavailable," I said calmly. "If they don't leave, you're authorized to contact security. Understood?" 10 minutes later, my cell phone exploded. "Lindsay, I can't believe you wouldn't even come down to talk to us. Sean, we drove all this way to make peace, and you're hiding Mom. Your sister is crying in the car. Hope you're happy." I turned my phone off and stared blankly at my screen, the cursor blinking like it was waiting for me to break. But I didn't. That night, the emails started. The subject line read, "Family Intervention." My mom's message accused me of being emotionally unstable, claimed my behavior was out of character, and gently suggested I consider joint family counseling before things spiral further. It was master-class gaslighting. They weren't trying to reconnect. They were trying to regain control, to reframe my boundaries as breakdowns and turn my no into a symptom of dysfunction. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the message to my therapist and spent my next session with Dr. Harris unpacking how people who break your heart can still convince you it's your fault. "They're not reaching out to heal," she said. "They're reaching out to restore the dynamic that served them, not you." It stung, but it was true. And still the calls came, the messages, the escalating guilt, until one day the tone shifted. Shanahan called from a number I didn't recognize. "Don't hang up," he said quickly. "Make it fast," I replied. "We just want to work this out. Things got out of hand. Lindsay and we're expecting. We were going to announce it during the trip." There it was, the trump card. "You're pregnant," I said. "Yeah," he said softly. "And we really need stability right now. Please don't kick us out." I paused. A month ago, those words might have gutted me. "But now I'm not kicking you out," I said. "I gave you legal notice. You still have time. And you have 2 parents who seem more than willing to host you. But she's pregnant," he repeated, like that was supposed to undo months of disrespect. "And that's great. I wish you both well. But pregnancy doesn't entitle you to my home or erase the way you treated me." He hung up. An hour later, Lindsay posted a baby announcement on Instagram. Bump. Filtered tears. Caption, "Grateful for new life, even when family fails you. Hash miracle in the mess. We rise." I didn't respond. I didn't comment. I didn't even rage scroll, because I realized something: I didn't need their version of the story to be wrong in order for my boundaries to be right. By mid-January, they moved the rest of their belongings out. No confrontations, no goodbyes. Just my dad showing up with boxes and a silence I couldn't tell was shame or stubbornness. Honestly, I didn't care. My house was mine again, clean, quiet, sacred. I rearranged furniture, bought a new rug for the office, repainted the spare room a calm sage green. It was no longer the space I let people disrespect. It was the space I had finally chosen to respect myself in. And with that came other shifts too. I started going out more, saying yes to happy hours, hosting small dinners with people who laughed with me, not at me. I built something new from the ruins of the old. Not perfect, but real. Maya became a permanent fixture in my life. So did Ethan, who helped me draft a simple, elegant rental agreement template that now lives in my Google Drive, just in case. My coworkers became friends. My neighbors became brunch guests. Even my Aunt Valerie reached out. Turns out she had her own history with my mom's manipulations. We started exchanging weekly emails. And somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing myself as the villain in someone else's story and started becoming the hero in my own. So if you're still with me, thank you, truly. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but it's real. And if you're in a season where you feel like you're being pushed out, diminished, or guilted for setting healthy limits, I hope you know you are not wrong for choosing yourself. You're allowed to grow away from people who refuse to grow with you. You're allowed to stop performing for the comfort of others. You're allowed to close the door not out of hate, but out of healing. If this story meant something to you, I'd love for you to like the video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with someone you love? How did it go? Drop your story below. I read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love to have you as part of this growing healing community. Because here, we're not just surviving family drama, we're rewriting what family really means. And I think that's the most powerful story of all.